I lost thousands and thousands of
Of
followers.
course.
Being honest about my faith shift, it doesn't matter what I believe on this. What matters is you know how to think for yourself. It's like I look around at this deconstruction movement, and what I see is revival. It's teaching kids that Jesus is someone who is about behavior instead of like Jesus is like radical.
I just hope that we can find those safe spots to ask those questions.
Buckle up. This is What the Hell Do I Know with JB.
All right, Tiffany Dawn, I'm so excited to have you here today. So for my guests, I want to just kind of give a quick introduction for those that are listening and may not be know who you are or why I have you on the show today.
Sure.
Yeah, so today's guest is someone who has become a trusted voice for many people rethinking their faith without walking away from Jesus. Tiffany Dawn is the host of the Outgrowing the Good Christian Girl podcast, where she shares her journey from a black and white understanding of faith to a more nuanced, grace-filled view of Christianity. She's an author, speaker, mom of two girls, and writer on Substack who is passionate about helping women untangle fear-based faith while staying rooted in Scripture and centered on Jesus. Tiffany reminds us that what many call deconstruction isn't a modern trend. It's a journey believers have walked throughout history as they've wrestled honestly with God. I'm excited to dive into her story and what she's learned along the way and how asking hard questions can actually deepen our faith. So,
Mm.
welcome,
Wow,
Tiff.
I love that. Thank you. That made me feel so good.
Yeah,
So thank
yeah,
you. Yeah, thanks for having me here. I'm so excited.
yeah.
I
Thank
love
you for
talking
saying
about this
yes.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, it's always good. I appreciate it. You know what's great is that I didn't find your Instagram page. My wife found your Instagram page. And so we scour different influencers and people local and far and voices that we think our audience obviously would love to hear from. And as my podcast now, 3 years, if you've been on this journey, those listening for about almost 3 years now, started off really a more leadership podcast into just a jack of all trades. I mean, parenting and different sort of discussions. But now I feel like it's starting to narrow into a field of um, those questioning, like, is it still worth it to follow Jesus? And then, is it safe? What are the safe spaces in our faith to
Yeah.
ask those questions and find that? And we live in a really weird time. But my wife has been following you, and she forwarded me your Instagram page, and she said, "You need to check Tiffany Dawn out." And so then I started following you, and, so yeah, that's how you came on the frame to be, and I love that. I have 2 daughters, so I'm always interested in hearing the female perspective, and it's easy for
Mm.
me to get trapped in another guy, another dude, or whatever, but there's a voice out there that I miss hearing from,
Mm.
and so
Mm.
that's
That's
why
so
I think you're
cool.
here.
Wow, I feel so honored that your wife found my Instagram. That's so cool. I'm definitely like I stopped posting for quite a while until this year again because it just the stress of life, but also I was actually in a spiral of losing followers the more I talked about outgrowing my faith. And when I started coming out about some of my faith shifts, I had grown kind of a good sized platform on YouTube and Instagram. And once I started being honest about my faith shift, I lost thousands and thousands of
Of
followers.
course, of
And so
course.
and I just felt like I have to do this to be honest, to be authentic. Like I can't give the same advice I've always given when I've changed so much. And I think some of that advice is doing harm now. And, but just at the beginning of this year, I was like, you know what? I've been writing a new book called Born Again Again about outgrowing certainty, but holding on to our faith. And I was like, I need to start getting my social media up again. And it was so discouraging for a long time because it was just like anything I'd post, people would hit unfollow. And only recently has it been that it started growing again and finding that community. So that's really encouraging to hear that you guys ran across it.
Well, I just want you to know that that just encouraged me because I came out of the faith world myself.
Yes.
And I always tell people I was a default pastor in downtown Atlanta. And so I wasn't even supposed to be there and crazy stuff. But then as for 10 years, I've been, I let go of a lot. I deconstructed a long time ago, and I'm still
Mm,
deconstructing. And I love how you say, uh, that that's not really that's a term we've given to it modern, in this
right,
modern world.
right.
But people forever have been wrestling with faith. I was in the
Yes.
pool over the 4th of July. I was in the pool with my mother.
Good place
I
to be.
love oh my gosh, I love my mother. I love my mother so much,
Aw,
and it's so great when we get to be together. And, we were just talking about, and in fact, I was sharing with her that her heart for Jesus is in large part why I have a heart for Jesus. And she's always wrestled. Yeah, she went to Bob Jones University. You
wow.
know anything about
Yes.
Bob Jones University, right?
Yes.
It's like one step from, like, Mennonite, it's just
Isn't it, like,
so
separate sidewalks for guys and girls, or am I thinking of
100%,
somewhere else?
and
Okay,
dating women,
yes.
and when she went, you're talking about civil rights era and things of this nature. I mean, there
Whoa.
were lots of things, and there were papers and essays that she wrote talking about pushing back against the civil rights movements even during her college days, or, pushing, against the church and
Right,
where
right.
they were, and saying that she didn't see it was right, had this racial discrimination happening. And I just told her I love how she's wrestled with her faith, and when when her heart and the Holy Spirit and her convictions hit a wall against what was being told to her she had to accept, she just still questioned and went through it, and
Yes.
trusted God into that unknown. And I
Mm,
love that about her, and I think that's the spirit that I have today. So, it
yeah,
just speaks to what you're saying. I'm just jumping on here in this quick commercial soundbite to tell you you have got to start subscribing to this show. If you like the content I'm putting out, which I promise you, I am doing the best to put out great content, and I know you're trusting me with your time when you're listening to this, and it means a lot. And if you feel like I need to listen a little bit more or do something different, I want your feedback. I love your comments. I love the DMs, but I need the subscriptions. And so it is an easy way to support the work that we're doing here at What the Hell Do I Know? Just go ahead and click that subscribe button now. Which I
mm,
love that about it. You talk about your dad a lot, which
yes.
and I love this. I love this because tell us a little bit about your father. He was a pastor, or is he
Yeah.
still a pastor?
No, he actually owns a technology company now.
Oh my
Big
god.
shift.
Yeah,
But yes,
yes.
when I was a kid, he was the children's pastor, children's director. He was ordained in our non-denominational Pentecostal church. I mean, picture like when I was growing up, we had a full-on revival, as you'd call it, with the stairs to the balcony packed out with people sitting there, people finding gold dust on their hands, falling over when you'd pray, laughing with holy laughter. Like people would come from all over New York and into Canada to come see what was happening at our church. And so, like, my parents, that's the era that I grew up in. And my parents were part of the leadership for, and not like the main pastor, but over kids' ministry, which is something I'm very passionate about. But yeah, so my parents grew up in that. My mom was a brand new Christian when she met my dad, actually, in their
Right.
early 20s. So she grew up not really a religious house. They were Catholic, I would say, but it wasn't like super religious. And so she grew up in this church. This was the only church I think she'd ever really gone to, maybe one briefly before that. And so she grew up in this church that had a lot of really good things, but also was a little bit like a cult. It was like both, and I think that's one of the hard things about
I
untangling
control
is
faith, yeah.
yes, high control, high stakes faith.
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
tell her mom, like, "I don't know how you raised 5 kids and homeschooled them when, like, you were told if your kids make a mistake, they're gonna end up in hell." I mean, our church didn't really say it in those words, but that was the
sure,
feeling, like, it was high
sure,
stakes. So,
sure.
my mom comes into it from that. My dad has been a Christian his whole life, and, like, his parents were, like, super involved in leadership stuff at their church. His grandparents were. His dad still preaches. My grandmother just passed away, but she'd been leading a Bible study at their church for years. So, like, he comes from this long legacy of very strong, involved Christians. So it's interesting, like, them then they come together in this church. Fun side story, my husband's family actually was also in this church plant. So
Come on. Wow.
Yeah, so, like, my parents, my husband's parents, and a few other of my closest friends now today, their parents were involved in starting this Pentecostal church I grew up in. So
Wow.
it's like before they were married, before they had kids, they would all, like, hang out, Saturday night services in a school building for hours, and then eventually us kids came along and the hours-long services continued. They'd bring blankets and pillows, and we'd camp out under the rows of seats. And so there was yeah, so that was kind of the world I grew up in, and I loved it. Like,
Yeah,
the
you were in.
pastors of that church, I am still consider them close friends, and they have gone on their own faith journeys, which I think is a sign that someone's, like, legit. Like, they're not afraid to question, to rethink, and to get to watch your pastors do that is freaking amazing, you know?
That's quite a blessing.
Yes, yes. It's like I feel like I've seen what church can be, both in the ugly and the really beautiful at the same time, which is so how life is. And it kind of yeah, so what I was gonna say about all that is untangling is can be hard because you feel like you've grown up in this all or nothing world, and it's so easy to carry that all or nothing forward. And you want to look back and say it was all bad or it was all good. But truth is, like, life isn't all bad or all good. And our faith wasn't all bad or all good. There's like the beautiful and the ugly, the parts that healed and the parts that wounded in the same place. And they collide just like heaven and earth collide, you know? And so I think for me, looking back on both my parents and my church, it's this messy picture of genuine, honest love of God in both our human imperfections and this beautiful, just I loved it. I loved my
Yeah.
church.
I
Yeah.
love how you describe that because it's kinda like 2 things can be true, right?
Yes.
That you can
Yes.
learn something that, could have been bad theology or
Right.
bad thinking. However, it could have been incredibly well-meaning people, and there were also incredibly well-meaning lessons, and there were
Yes.
incredibly good things that came out of it. You know,
Yes.
what I see in that is the thread of that, for me, that God's still good, right? In spite of
Yeah.
all of our flaws as human beings trying to
Right.
understand him, he's still good, like, he's still going to figure it out. I mean, I know I worry about the church, I worry about where it's at, I worry about its coziness up to the government currently, I worry
Yep.
about some of the things the messaging coming out of it, but I never worry about God, like, I never worry about Jesus, right? I
Right.
never worry about that aspect, like, he's still gonna do his thing.
Yep. He will. With us or in spite of us.
So
He's gonna do it.
yes, right. So you talk though about your dad in a lot on your Instagram feed, especially, and I know you're probably on all the other socials as well too. But when you talk about him, you talk about the and again, it resonated with me because of the mother I grew up with. Is this dad that would allow you to have questions? Even more so, my in-laws were that way too. They really like to question things and ask questions about, "Is this true? Is this right?" "How can you trust
Yeah.
it?" Things of this nature. What were some of the things growing up that he would do that allowed you to question that allowed that I think in one post you even said he would have been considered a heretic or something of this nature, so
Thought he was a heretic. Like, he's the kids pastor at our church, and I
right,
thought he was a heretic, like,
right.
because
That's so
at
good.
at church, it's more like, the normal church things, and, like, he never really got into the weeds there, but it felt very healthy. But, at home, he'd really push back, and I remember when we were growing up, we would have family dinners basically every single night. And at family dinner, we either did impromptu speeches where dad would give us a topic and we'd have 1 minute to come up with what we were going to say. And then we would present. And he always gave points for creativity. I remember one of the younger sisters, Iris, she got the topic, she wrote it on a piece of paper, she came back in the kitchen, she stood on top of the paper and just talked, and at the end, my dad's like, "That's not the topic I gave you," and she holds up the paper with the name of the topic, she goes, "I was talking on topic." He goes, "A plus." So, like, thinking outside the box was so important.
That's so
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
And then the other thing we do are family debates. And this is what I've talked about on my Instagram, which is he'd come home after listening to NPR or whatever other heathen radio station in our circle of Christianity. And he'd say, here's what I heard about today. So let's have a debate. And I remember especially one debate, well, multiples of this one, which was pro-life versus pro-choice. And like in our world, like you were pro-life, like anything, if you even questioned that, were you really a Christian? Did you really read the Bible, you know?
Right, right.
And my dad, he's like, okay, you choose a side. I'm like, well, obviously I'm going to choose pro-life. So I start arguing it. And then my dad starts coming back at me from pro-choice, sharing these sounding really good arguments and even pulling the Bible in a little bit, you know? And I'm like, what? I was like, we're going back and forth and I'm getting more and more flustered and anxious. And I'm like, Dad, what do you believe on this? And he's like, Tiffany, it doesn't matter what I believe on this. What matters is you know how to think for yourself and you know how to listen to the other side of any story. And that has become like a hallmark of my life for me. I think, again, that all or nothing, we grew up all or nothing, a lot of us in evangelicalism, and it's so easy to carry that forward even after untangling or deconstruction and
Yeah,
still look
yeah.
at the world through this lens of all or nothing, black or white, good or bad, instead of taking the time to actually hear from somebody else. I remember like, is it okay if I talk about politics on here? If not,
Yeah,
that's
of
okay.
course. Yeah, no,
Okay.
no, yeah, YouTube doesn't
I should
care
have
enough.
asked you that before. Okay. You can always edit stuff out. But yeah, now people will be like, what did something
What
get
did
edited? Right.
we're not editing anything. Don't
Perfect.
have time.
Yeah, seriously though. But yeah, I remember like the first time Trump ran, a lot like I live in upstate New York, and so it's a very Democrat state primarily, but a lot of the Christians I grew up with, even at that church, even like my parents, my husband's parents, like a lot of people we grew up with who were very conservative Christians, they looked at Trump's life and said, why would we vote for this man? Like, this doesn't line up with scripture. And even if he has good sounding policies, and it wasn't true for everybody, but there were a lot of people I knew. And I was shocked when he won because all the people in my little bubble wouldn't have voted for him. And so I'm like, wait a second, there are Christians who voted for him. And I remember actually somebody reaching out, a really good friend's, a friend of a really good friend. And she was like, I can't believe you didn't vote for Trump. He was like the Republican candidate and Christians vote Republican, you know? And I was like, I always thought that too until seeing his life. And what happened then, usually it's like, well, we're at an impasse. We don't talk. But instead, I asked her, like, what was it that you saw in Trump that you wanted to vote for? And I just let her share it. And that was because of my dad teaching me, you always listen to the other side of the story. And then it becomes less like burning bridges and more like building them and say, and I, after talking with her, I was like, okay, like still don't agree. Like I would still never vote for him, but like, I understand where you were coming from. And I think that like, I know that's so controversial to say, but I think that understanding, just listening to somebody else and finding whatever common threads you can is huge. And I mean, you know, it's nuanced too, because you never want to promote harm and you want to like, you know, change things and not just like quote unquote keep the peace, which is code for do nothing and don't challenge the system, but like to take the time to listen to somebody else. That's really something my dad taught me, that it was safe to do that and it was safe to question and yeah, to learn from people who think very differently than we do.
I am so proud to know my friends at True North Pest Control, and I want you to know them too. They're a family-owned business that cares. I love working with family-owned businesses. Traditionally, family-owned businesses live, work, and play in the communities that they're involved in, and True North does just that. They're a growing company, and I would encourage you, if you need pest control service of any kind, termites, bugs, annual sprays, quarterly spray, whatever it is, mosquitoes, they can take care of you. They are your pest control heroes. So give them a call. They're all over Central Florida, here where I live in the Emerald Coast, and the entire state of Georgia. Check them out. That's TrueNorthPest.com. True North Pest Control. Thanks so much. Tell them JB sent you. By now, you may have heard me talk about my friends at floors.com. That's FLOORZZ. Make sure you go check them out, floors.com. They have all your flooring needs for remodel, new build, great designers in-house. Give them a call. Tell them JB sent you. It'll mean the world to me, but I know it'll mean the world to them. Well, what's interesting is I really love that example, by the way. So kudos to your dad. I think that's really incredible advice. I think
Yeah.
that's incredible parenting that I'm
Mm,
certain you're passing down and figuring out in your own way to make that work. So I think
yeah.
that, and what a generational example. I mean, it's so
Mhm.
amazing. Interestingly, as I think about this, is I think about passages like "Love your enemies," right?
Yes,
And I think
right?
about love others as yourself. These
Mm,
rules that come into my head.
yeah.
I live in the area I live in, we like to call it LA, which is Lower Alabama. And so I mean, I wouldn't have friends if I didn't have MAGA friends, which I know
Sure,
some
right.
people online did hear that and like, how dare you, right? You should just
Mm,
isolate yourself and not have
right.
friends. For me, I just don't see it that way, and that
Yeah.
if I'm called to love people, I'm called to love people. It's just how I
Yes,
feel. Like
exactly.
if practicing my faith means to love, and yes, it's going to be hard.
Mhm.
Sometimes there are ideals that don't line up that I think, like you said, are harmful. Doesn't mean that I don't push back. Doesn't mean that we don't ask
Right,
questions. Doesn't mean that I
right.
don't have uh, heartfelt discussions.
Yeah,
You know,
yes.
but I have to figure out how to do that in a way that still says I love you and I care deeply about you and I want to see the humanity in you.
Right.
And that can be difficult. That can for
Yes.
sure. I get it. I get it can be difficult, but what's the other alternative? To not practice
Mm,
my faith? I
yes.
don't know how to walk it out any other way.
Right. That's huge. And I think, like, again, carrying that all or nothing forward, it's like we grew up in this exclusionary religious culture, a lot of us, where like
Mm.
certain
Yeah,
people were in and certain people were out. And it's
yeah,
tempting to bring that mindset forward just
yeah.
with a different perspective. And so it's like now different people are in, the opposite people are out,
Yeah.
but we're
What's funny is they
still,
would say, "I'm out," or "You're out,"
yes,
right?
yes,
Right. The group that I
totally.
used to hold dear to would say, "You're the
Yes.
one that's out now." You know?
Yup,
Yeah.
totally. But it's like we still want to live inside that prison we make for ourselves where some are in and some are out. We're like, God didn't call us to live in a prison where people are in and out. He called us to hang out with, to love everybody. And so, yeah, I think that's so cool. I think that's one of my goals for myself is to always have close friends on both sides of politics and to always have close friends on both sides of any hot topic issue because otherwise I'm putting myself in an echo chamber and I am not really living as I think I'm meant to live. So, yeah, I think that's really cool that you have found that too.
Well, same. I think, again, I do think I think you're hitting on something that's really true, and being able to learn
Yes.
from people and being able to grow and in hopes that they can be able to grow. I totally understand, and it's fair. I totally understand the hypocrisy of being called out from the church and from folks that would say, "Well, how are we being good neighbors?" And I think everybody
Mm,
has to examine that. And
mm,
that's the part that I talk with my friends on the other side of
yeah.
these debates is like, I talked to Zach Lambert the other day, and beautifully put, he said he had a friend that she when she's questioned if she's a Christian, she says, "I don't know. You need to
Mm.
ask my neighbor."
Whoa.
I
I
think is an
love that.
incredible statement, and I think that is the thing that I constantly push back on is that
Yes.
don't say you're a Christian, ask your neighbors if you're a Christian,
Yes.
ask them
Right.
how you're being, which I think that's so important, an important discussion and nuance.
Mm,
What are you excited for the church about? Does anything
mm.
excite you about the church
Oh my
and
gosh,
coming up?
yes. Yeah, I feel like the prayer in my heart is like, God, turn us into places of healing. Like, raise up churches that are safe places, that are places of healing. Cause like I look around at this deconstruction movement and what I see is revival. I see like people who are taking the call to love seriously, people who are saying, like, we're all made in the image of God. And so I am going to go on these marches for justice. And like the things that get people labeled woke or whatever, I see as revival. Like this revival that I prayed for on my knees in this Pentecostal church when I was growing up is happening right now. I really believe that. And so I am so excited for this movement. And it only makes sense that it would be slow. And because if it goes, you need people pushing it forward and people kind of holding the line so that it can slowly and carefully move forward instead of like going too fast or too far. I don't know if that's true. That's like my
You can leave
theory
people
on it
behind.
though.
I think you can leave people behind. I think you can go so fast, you leave people behind. People aren't
Yes.
ready, people aren't getting there. There's new, like you said, it's nuanced. There are
Right.
folks that are running so fast right now, and they're like, "Why are you slowing down to pick anybody else up?"
Yeah.
And then there's
Yeah.
people slowing them down saying, "But we can't leave anyone behind," you know? And so it's a weird. I mean,
Yes.
it's not everybody in the deconstruction movement that I'm sure Tiffany, you and I wouldn't always agree with, and
Sure.
they vice
Yeah.
versa. That's okay, and I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting that you said that, you like it slow.
I don't
It's
know that I
interesting.
like it slow. I'm not a slow
I got
person.
you. Okay,
I
okay, fair,
theorize that it's helpful for it to be slow to help me be patient.
fair, fair.
But I see revival in this and I see different churches raising up. I just heard from somebody, she goes to a church in Michigan and they have started offering free weddings to the queer community as a form of repentance for how the church has treated them.
Very
And
interesting.
wherever you stand on that idea of homosexuality theologically, I think that's such like an out of the box idea for like thinking like how do I love my neighbors? And some people would say, well, definitely not that way. Some people would say, definitely that way. But I think it's like this movement, this forward movement of how, yeah, like changing things up and getting creative. My sister went to a church in Raleigh, Durham when she lived there, and they built this, they used a lot of their church's money to build a YMCA to help out and offer programs for youth there. And then eventually the pastors started deconstructing and there was a massive exodus from the church and it shrunk so much. And so they sold their church building and they started meeting in the YMCA and like renting it out from the YMCA that they had built and gifted. And so, like, I don't know, I just see like things
Love that.
shifting and it's so cool to hear these stories of shifting. Um yeah, and again it's nuanced. Like I recognize that for some people who have been really hurt by the church or by certain theologies, you might not be able to be around that right now. And that is okay. You have to know yourself. You have to know what's healthy for you. But I think for someone like me who, like, my experience with church, there have been painful parts, but it's been a lot of joy. I've seen what church can be. And the most grief I feel right now is because I don't think we're all being what church could be. And so, like, right now we've been visiting different churches in our area. We've been at a certain one for many years, but like just to see what's going on in our area. And I think like there are some places where I go in and at my heart just like leaps. It's like this is doing something different than the status quo. This is honest and it makes me so happy. And then there's times I walk in and I feel so much grief because I feel like, oh, this is just perpetuating harmful theology and doing the same thing, which isn't bad to do the same thing. I'm rambling now. But yeah, so I think it's nuanced. It was my point. Yeah. But
No, I hear you. I mean, as far for me, it's tough. We live in it, like I said, a very tough area, and for faith for me, and I need to
mhm.
say it for me because I know there are
Right.
others that feel flourished and fed where they're at. I have walked into a lot of churches in the area I live in now, and many of my LGBTQ friends would not feel safe or
Yes.
comfortable with, and so then
Absolutely.
I can't go because then I don't feel
Mm.
safe if all my friends can't go. Or I
Yes.
have interracial marriage friends that they wouldn't even believe it or not, wouldn't feel comfortable in some of the pews that I've
Yeah.
gone into down here. And
Yeah.
so I find myself, very much at as a, like a refugee in the church world. I
Mm,
don't have a space that I can go. Now, that's okay. I use the podcast as my church when I'm talking to
mm,
folks. I'm in my daily walk. I talk more Jesus now than when I had a church in downtown
mm,
Atlanta.
mm.
And I'm okay. I'm okay with that. And it's fine. And that's the season I'm in right now. But I have seen it's a tough spot. I mean, you talked about that particular community, the LGBTQ plus community, and
Yeah.
my gay and queer friends I love dearly, and I
Mm,
gave that theology up decades ago. I was in downtown
mm,
Atlanta. I was in Little Five Points, and I started breaking bread with lesbian friends, and in fact, one of my first members of our church were a lesbian couple, and
that's
they
so
came
cool.
kicking and screaming into the church, you know. And it was a beautiful thing. And once you start to know people, that usually changes.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, knowing people is what really changes it. Like, I remember, I've talked about this on my Instagram, but somebody close to me, came out as trans about, 11 years ago, and at the time, I thought, "There's no way that's right." And I thought I have to, like, get together with her, I have to, like,
Uh-huh.
warn her,
Same, right?
and Right, exactly. I'm like, "Oh my goodness." But she's one of my closest friends now, like, and just watching her journey was really what stirred me up to go further on mine. Just seeing, like, the life it brought to her eyes and the peace and just, like, how alive she is, and that to me is, like, a huge sign of God at work. When you are alive and flourishing and thriving, it's like, that's a huge sign when you're more loving and more peaceful and more joyful, and the fruits of the Spirit, like, you see, like, God is at work there. And so that really led me to begin questioning the theology I had held and exploring, like, is there another way to understand Scripture on this? And as I read and read, it was so uncomfortable because this was, like, one of those things, like, you do not question that and pro-life, like sexuality and
Right.
pro-life, like, if you even question that, you're out. And it
Foundation.
was Right, exactly, and that's the topic when I started talking about it on my Instagram and YouTube that I started losing thousands and thousands of followers because it goes immediately to "You're a heretic." There's no, like, "Listen to another perspective," and the reason I was able to do that was because my dad taught me, you gotta hear the other side. If you're gonna have a stand on something, you gotta know what the other side is saying, and, so yeah, and knowing that person really made
No,
a
like I said,
difference.
you gave me a lot of encouragement because, like I said, I came out of just earlier when we were talking, I came out of that world and you were talking about losing followers. And so then when I started then doing even my thing online, I started losing it was funny. I had I can't, this is a while back, but I can remember somebody said, well, I had this guy said, I stopped listening to you a long time ago because you married another couple, you married a couple. And to make the long story short, it was a couple that was it was a man and woman actually, but it was a couple that was older that didn't want to go down to they were one, according to him in the biblical sense, they were living in sin and then they didn't wanna get married through the state, in part because they both had disabilities and they were older, and if they
Mhm.
got married, they would lose some money really from the state,
Oh,
and,
wow,
I
yeah,
actually didn't care. I thought, "You know what? I actually don't care. I'll marry
right,
you in front of God, and if you wanna make it right in the state, make it right in the state. If you don't, I don't care. I
right,
actually don't care. It's not my
yeah,
job to judge your decisions here. It's my job to say that I'll marry you in front of God." And that ceremony is very much a religious ceremony to me, and it's very much a sacred and sacrament, holy thing, and so for me, I was okay in marrying him, but I just thought that was funny because he said, "You lost me then all those years ago," and I thought, "Wow, you've been holding on to that." I said, "It wasn't the gay thing?" Yeah.
I know, right? If people unfollow for any other reason, it's
Yeah.
shocking. You're like,
Yeah,
"Wait,
it's
what?"
shocking. He's like, "What?"
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of other stuff that I've actually said.
Right, right.
You just hadn't been
Yeah,
listening.
yeah. Right. I know. It's crazy. I think, like, one of the things I'm really thankful my parents did was when we were younger, they just always thought outside the box. When we were really young, we didn't have a lot of money. We lived in this inner city neighborhood, drug dealers across the street, a gas station right next door to us, and it was definitely, like, a rougher area. And, my parents decided to put a sign out front as tall as my dad, kinda looked like a gigantic for sale sign, but it said, "We believe in prayer," and it had a place to drop your prayer requests, and then it said, "Join us on Wednesday nights for dinner and Bible study." And literally anybody could come in. I will never forget Billy the bottle man. He would push his cart of bottles by our house, and he was dying from AIDS, and he was really struggling, and he was there every Wednesday, and he would come shopping in our pantry regularly, or he'd call up my parents and say, "I'm really cold in my apartment. I have no blankets in the winter." We'd go get him blankets, and us kids would be a part of all of this. We'd go deliver blankets to Billy as a family, and we'd have these people, random people sitting on our wooden porch swing when we came home from the grocery store. And I remember, like, when I got a little older and was old enough to be left home while my mom ran a quick errand, if I saw one of these people come and sit on our porch swing, I felt so safe and just like, oh, I'm protected. They're here with me, you know? And so, like, I think that idea of like, church is meant to be a welcoming place. It's meant to be like
Definitely.
where everybody comes in, and I think growing up seeing that in, like, a very practical way, and, like, being so excited every Wednesday to see who would show up, because people always did. Some people came every week, some people would just randomly show up at different times, there'd be new people there, and just, like, that was amazing, just to, like, recognize how much we can learn from people who are not the same as us, and that we are all welcome together. Um, yeah, that really
Well,
set me
and
up.
it's a perfect example of what we've been talking about, of just
Yes,
loving people that don't look like you, but both ways.
yes. Right,
People that
right.
we don't feel comfortable with in the church anymore, that we may say we don't know that they're safe for everyone anymore.
Yeah,
I'm still friends with a lot of,
yeah,
and I have people that inside the church that I don't, and I need to retract some of that, because I know there's people inside the church that are really well-meaning, and, they wouldn't say a lot of those things because they wouldn't be hurtful. They may harbor some of those feelings, or they just don't know what to do with it right yet.
right.
So there's
Yeah,
plenty of people in that it's more nuanced than what I'm making it out to be.
sure,
And
sure.
and I wanna be clear of that, and I think and I know you've been clear of that. It is very nuanced. I
Yes,
just think we
yes.
have to love people on both sides of the political spectrum,
Yeah,
on both sides of the faith spectrum, well, and that
yeah.
and
Mhm.
that's the probably maybe it's the hardest practice of my faith that I can do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think about, like, you know, the dichotomy of loving and speaking up, and I was just
Mhm.
journaling about this morning. I have been reading over and over lately in Acts 15 how it says Paul and Barnabas vehemently argued with the church leaders on behalf of harmful theology that was inflicting pain. So they did not just say, we're going to stand by and wait, we're just going to be quote unquote peacekeepers. They vehemently argued. That was their response. They went to bat for these people. But I think, like, the hard part is we started going to a new church recently, and the pastor, who's a woman, which I absolutely love, she said, are you leaving a trail of life behind you? And I've been thinking a lot about that, because sometimes we just want to burn it all down. And I get that way too. I get so angry at some of the things that the church keeps doing. And it's like, would you please repent already and change? And I get so mad sometimes. And you just want to burn it all down. But, like, that is destruction. And there's a difference between the kind of death that brings life, the kind of vehement arguing on behalf of specific people, and just burning it all down. And I think that's a really hard balance to find, because there is this sacred and necessary place of speaking up and vehemently arguing on that behalf. But there's also, you know, you could easily go overboard and turn it into destruction. And so I think that's a really hard balance to find, but so important. We'll never get it perfect, but so important to be trying to.
Oh,
So,
that's so refreshing. It's so refreshing to hear, Tiffany, and I really, really appreciate your perspective. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. Um, and figuring out how to lovingly walk in this era we're in and have
yeah,
disagreements. My hope and my prayer in what you just said is that anyone listening to this will just open their heart to be able to have these discussions, to
yeah,
examine their faith and to wrestle with it the same way. And if you land on
right,
the other side, you land on the other side, but to
right,
not shut each other off, to continue to debate it. Out
yeah.
of those debates came James, the brother of Jesus, who
Mm,
who I always feel like I have a brother, and if my brother were to tell me that he was the savior of the world and the son of God, I would laugh in your face. Like, I've
of
seen this
course.
kid. I've seen what he does, and by the way, Nate, I love you, but, I'm telling you, I would be like, "There's no way," and likewise, he would say that about me, right? I've seen this guy. I know who he is. But, so to me, when the brother of Jesus stands up and says he's the savior of the world, that to me is also, like, pretty inspiring, right?
Yes.
James stands up and says, "We shouldn't make it hard for people to come to Christ." I
Right.
mean, out of these
Exactly.
discussions, he's like, "Guys, we shouldn't make it hard for people to
Mm,
come." And so I love the invitation, just follow me, right? Just come and follow
yeah,
me
yeah,
and
yeah.
and see what happens. But you're right, these debates we're having, I'm prayerful that we just don't shut down.
Mm,
And I feel like that's the rub right now is we have folks that are shutting down, and you and I may be open, but that doesn't mean the other side's quite open there. And there's
mm.
folks in there that are leaving into this kind of, we're calling it a deconstruction movement, we're calling it walking away from the church, we're calling it whatever it is. I'm just prayerful we can find some safe places to have these discussions.
Yes. That's what I would love to see. Like, you hear pastors preach on one perspective on a passage. I would love to see just like two people who think differently just talking about it. Like, and I guess maybe that could be harmful in some ways too. I guess you kind of got to think about it. But like,
Yeah,
I
right.
just, yeah, I want to see that. Like, yeah. And I think that idea of like, what am I leaving a trail of behind me? Like, and it's tricky because death is often the first step to new life. Like the Nile River, my daughter's obsessed with ancient Egypt, has been since she was 4. And we just actually got to go a few weeks ago and see
That's awesome.
Egypt, which was so cool. But like the Nile River floods its banks every year, and that's how they can farm in the desert. And without that, death, the life wouldn't come. Or like forest fires, and some parts out west, like without the fire, the new seeds wouldn't be planted for new growth. So there is a sense of like some death has to happen for new life to come, or, old wineskins and new wineskins. Like you see that. But it's like, but am I looking for like what brings life eventually, or am I just looking to destroy and to burn it all down? And like, that's really what I'm wrestling with. Like, how do I speak up, which we need to do, but in a way that eventually brings life. Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know the answer, but
Yeah, I don't either. Do you find times that you've kind of alluded to this during the conversation, and I would tell you that I probably find this too, but from your past, I grew up, saying the pledge to the Christian flag, the pledge to the American flag, the
mm,
onward Christian soldiers,
yup,
all of these
same.
different songs, right? Do you find
Mm,
sometimes like i- still wanting to like defend Jesus or to, if somebody says, "Well,
mm.
I'm done with the church," and you're like, "Oh my gosh, don't do that. You're gonna go to hell." And then you're like, "Wait, maybe not. I don't know." Yeah.
Right.
You find like yourself falling into that world sometimes still?
Oh my gosh, I have to like talk myself through that so many times. Like I'll do like, posts and people write different things in the comments. And a lot of them I'm like, cool, cool. And then some of them I'm like, be careful. But I'm like, nope, okay. How do I respond? Like kind of like therapy has helped me kind of talk myself through some of these. But I think I feel myself like probably like you wanting to defend Jesus to people who have been harmed by the church a lot too.
Yeah.
Just like it's like, but I promise he's not like that, you know,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, so I think I definitely have to like pause a lot and just kind of think through what to even say. Yeah, I totally. And I
Yeah.
mean, I was the person who like I smuggled Bibles into closed countries when I was 15.
Come
Like,
on. Yeah.
yeah, like I preached to people in airports when I was 5 years old, and I'd tell them, "You gotta accept Jesus so you don't die like, you don't go to hell if the plane crashes." Like, just what you wanna hear from a 5-year-old. And, like, so, like, my entire life, like, I have preached to so many people. I helped lead a revival on my community college campus when I was 17. Like, I have been a preacher, and I've always been like, "Come to Jesus, come to Jesus." And, like, part of it to be saved from hell, but also part of it, like, I just really want you to know how much God loves you. And so I think, like, that part of me is still alive and kicking in a sense, but it's, like, different now because it's,
Well,
like,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's, like, not out of fear anymore because, like, my theology of hell has changed dramatically, but it's, like and it's not I don't know. And I think, like yeah, I don't
Tiffany,
know.
the thing for me is if I become and this is for my audience, and if you see it online or if you run into me in my personal life or whatever, and if I become too exuberant about my relationship with Jesus to the point that I want you to know him, I apologize if that's offensive. I really do. I genuinely do. I genuinely do. But I just think he's so good.
Mm,
My mother, and it's from scripture, would say all the time, just taste and see, right? Taste and see. And it's hard for me to tell you that I've never had a friend better than Jesus. It's hard for me to tell you that. And I know that's weird. And I know that there's going to be people that'll be like, I don't get it. And I get it. I
man.
get it. I'm okay with that.
Mm,
And it's just that and it's not my faith and my my walking it out. Like, I feel the spirit in me, and I feel these things in these tugs and these pulls and these decisions that I wanna do, and, man, it's just so strong, it's kinda getting me right now. It's just that I feel it. It's
yeah,
so true, and that it's not for an afterlife, it's for a here and now. It's for
yeah.
take up right? Take my yoke. It's easy.
Mm,
And I've struggled all my life with anxiety. I've struggled all my life with things, intrusive thoughts and things of
yep.
these sorts of things that I've had to go to therapy for and deal with that no,
Mhm.
I didn't just read a Bible and go, that the spirit of the Lord will take it away.
Right.
Right.
Goodness. Yeah.
I'm a big advocate for mental health, and I think the church has done a poor job in that, at least when I was growing up.
Mm.
They
Mhm.
probably still today to a large part. But so I'm not saying don't seek help. In fact, I think those are tools that God gives us. I'm
Mhm.
just telling you that I've I'm so thankful for it. And so if my
Mm.
exuberance comes out, it's only because I want you to know it, right? I want
Mm.
you to know how good I think it can be, and that your
Mhm.
problem is usually with other people and not Jesus. That's, I
Mm.
guess, I don't know if I'm saying that well. So
Yeah. Or how Jesus has been presented, which a lot of
yeah,
times
yeah,
whew, I
yeah.
mean, yeah. Even I know my daughter, was really struggling with Sunday school, and so I went and sat in with her, and the way Jesus was presented was as somebody who affirms right behavior, and it was like the story of Martha and Mary when I sat in, and there's so much you can do with that story. It's like this Jesus who defies gender stereotypes and invites this woman to come sit at his feet in the position of a disciple reserved for men, the Jesus who welcomes everybody. And instead, it was like, to 7-year-olds, Jesus wants you to spend time with him first. And I was so angry because I'm just like, Natalie, I get it. Like, it's just like, and it seems so tame. It seems so like, healthy or happy, but like it's teaching kids that Jesus is someone who is about behavior instead of like Jesus is like radical. And so we got home that night or later that night at dinner, I told the story to the girls in my own words and talked about like the flipping gender stereotypes. And my 5-year-old and 7-year-old, were just like glued and like asking questions. They were invested. And it's like, this is the Jesus that I want kids to know and follow, and adults too,
Yeah.
when he's just presented as, you got to do something, right? Like, that's not the Jesus we see who was partying all the time and inviting everybody in and wanted his house full. Like, you look at the parables and it's all this radical welcome. And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
You're totally onto something. You're totally
yeah.
onto something.
Yeah. I just like, I want that to be how we grow up knowing Jesus. And I feel like even though there were things, like I said before, life isn't black and white. My past isn't all good or all bad. There were things I definitely had to unlearn, like this deep fear of hell. And my parents didn't talk about hell a lot. I'm not even sure exactly where that came from. But like, so there's things to untangle, but there was also this idea that all are welcome. And that is powerful. That will carry you through life, like that's something you can stand on. So, yeah.
You're right, and I think that's the safe place that we need to have and create, and hopefully, I know you're doing that. I'm hoping that my show here and even my page can create a safe place for you to hate Jesus, to love Jesus, to say
Mm,
whatever you need to say about Jesus. I'll let it land. I'm okay with it. The thing I know about him is he can take it. Um, you know, it, I just hope that we can find those safe spots to ask those questions and to get through it all and to not feel like, um, that there's only one picture of a very complex, uh, uh, God, that
mm, yeah.
what is it? Paul talks about how we know dimly now.
Mm,
Yeah. We
right.
really know dimly now. We don't
Yeah.
have a full, complete picture of it now. And so however you and I think, or however our counterparts on the other side in the faith world think, one thing we can all be certain of is that we know dimly now, and there will be some surprises. There there
Yeah.
will be some
Yeah.
surprises. We know dimly now.
We will be so surprised, I think, at who is in the party when we when we get there,
Yeah,
you know? Like,
yeah.
yeah, I the parable of the sheep and the goats used to terrify me. He's like, "You never." They're like, "When did we ever see you hungry or in prison and not visit you?" And to me, when I was growing up, I read that as like missing a trick question on a test where I could accidentally end up in hell. That was like how I read it. And now like I see the radical welcome in that the people who think they're shoo-ins are like, "Wait, hold on. We tried to, do everything right." And Jesus is like, "I welcome everybody," and I don't know. So I think that parable was a really powerful thing for me. I Yeah. I also like just lost my train of thought. It was something about church. Oh, I also like with creating those safe spaces, I'm really praying for people to like rise up and create them. And like with churches, there's been this movement and I think at the beginning of the way church is now, it was probably very life-giving for a lot of people. But I think, like, there's time for a shift, and, Phyllis Tickle talks about, in one of her books how there's been every 500 years historically since Christ, there's been this major shift in Christianity, and we are, like, familiar with Martin Luther and that shift, which was really a form of deconstruction, but, like, every 500 years since Jesus, there has been, and we're, like, around that mark now. And so
Interesting.
this shift is starting that like has been this historical pattern that she found, which is so interesting. And I think like for me personally, like I would love to see the church get smaller, not in the sense that there's less
Mm,
people
mm,
in it, but
mm.
like
Yeah.
smaller groups. And
Gatherings.
so like right. And so like less like this experience on Sunday that's a stadium experience and more like my husband and I have been toying with this idea of something we call greenhouse church, where it's like you set up this little structure in the backyard. It could even be like greenhouses, like covered with what weather resistant stuff and just whoever can fit you just come in and you like have a meal together and you take turns sharing thoughts or curating some kind of thing to listen to and discuss or read and discuss. And the kids are there and there's like activities for the kids and coloring and there can be some involvement and then they can kind of, and just like where families gather and like it's like small,
We're
small
better in
church.
circles than rows. I know a mega church that says that, but it's true. I mean, we're
Mm,
better in circles than rows, you know?
yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I mean, if I was ever to do another church again, I'd do 1,000 things differently, but one of them
Mm,
would be circles than rows. It would definitely
yeah,
be in that, or around a table and breaking bread and having a
right.
discussion and a topic and then supporting. I mean, it's one of the things. I mean, the American church has so many problems. I mean, it's so many problems. And we've done what we do to everything. We just kinda make it all bigly, you know? It's just like,
Mm,
"Yeah, let's go
mhm.
for it," you know? And we have these problems. I mean, the look, we can all agree that private jets and 4th and 5th and 6th homes and whatever it is, we can all agree that that was never the intent of the church. We can all agree to that.
Right.
But we're still turning a blind eye to it. I mean, we've got churches
Mhm.
that are giving away less than 2% of their annual budgets. I mean, we've got church, you know, and then there are, there are faithful churches that are giving, like you mentioned this church that deconstructed and sold their building and started meeting in the
Yeah,
Y. I
yeah,
mean, I talked
yeah.
to a good friend of mine the other day who was and I love him, and we had a debate, and he said, why do you have such a problem with the American church, and what would you have us do? And I said, "Sell it all. Sell it
Like
all
Jesus said,
and
yeah.
follow him." He's like, "Well, where would we meet?" I was like, "In the bars, in the parking lots, in the Y." Like, there's lots of places. There's lots of in
Yeah.
the park. There's lots of places. So it is an interesting sort of thing. Tiffany, you talk so openly about your dad. We've talked about your dad, but I think that we look at people, and this is part of the dimly sort of thought process. And maybe we'll kind of finish here, is that we we think about fathers and we think about our fathers and we think this is how God should be. You know, a good father would correct. A good father would call out. A good father wouldn't let you get into this harm and all that. But we also forget about that we only know what a father should look like because of the fathers we've experienced.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what does that seem to you as the father you've had? But if you were to think about God as a father, what does a good father look like?
Yeah, and I think, like, I mean, I just think about the prodigal son and how, like, that father, in some ways, it's not what we would think of as a good father in the church.
Right.
He's like,
Oh,
"Go
good.
ahead. Here's your inheritance," and the son is squandering it, and he's not, like, cutting ties, he's not berating him, he's not like, "You gotta make different decisions." Like, it feels like almost like foolish parenting, you know what I mean? It's like it's strange to me, and yet he's just there waiting. And then, like, with the older brother, he comes out and it's like, well, how did the older brother not know that this party was taking place? Like, it makes it sound like he's surprised. Like, why didn't the father invite him? Why didn't he make sure he had an invitation? So there's like it sounds like this weird parenting, but it really, like, gets to the heart of each of the people, and I think, like, of God as father/mother to us as, like, very unique, and so,
Mm,
like, unique to our personality, like, I have a different relationship with my parents than my sister does because
sure.
we're different people, so we interact in different ways, we need different things, and I think, like, that is that's, like, how I see God, I guess, and so, like, even for someone like me, an A-type Enneagram 1 black and white perfectionist, like, what I need to hear is, like, "You're doing great, rest." And my husband's like he's always says, "I think more better about myself than I should, and I think I'm awesome." So I need, God to be a little more like, "Hey, bro, like, like, there's this issue here." And I think, like, that I think God is big enough to be different for each of us, and I don't know. That's my thoughts on it.
I really love that. I really love that. I always tell people that if we are going to say that your relationship with God is personal,
Mm.
then it is. And my relationship, just like you said, my relationship with my wife on the other side of this camera is going to, and God bless if y'all ever meet, will be different than your relationship with her. Right?
Right, right, yeah,
Just will be. And so I love how you place that, that those relationships are gonna be different and that God can be, um, different to his children and meet your needs where you're at too. That's something that I think, we need to just think outside the box on those relationships.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Tiffany, I have really, really enjoyed our time here today, and I
Me
really
too.
appreciate you coming on the show and expressing that and creating a safe place, and thank you so much.
Thank you for creating this space. I really enjoyed myself. Thank you for having me.
For sure. Well, take care, and then until next time, we'll see you.